Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everyone to another Tackling Taboo podcast with myself, Stephen Adubafor. I'm project manager in Fiber Cities, and I'm also the events lead for the Ethnic Diversity Network. Today's episode is a collaboration with the EDN and the Pride Network. So I'm proud to introduce and happy to have a conversation with our very own Izzy. Morning, Izzy, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah.
And Izzy, you want to give us a brief introduction of who you are?
Yeah. So my name's Isabel. I'm the membership lead for the Pride Committee. In my day job, I work in chief engineers across civils and polling, and I'm a performance professional. So yeah, I'm really excited to be on the podcast actually because I think it's just really important that we like talk about where different identities intersect. So thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you so much, Izzy. Great to have you on, and great excited to hear more from you later as well. We've got a lovely Beck with us. Morning, Beck. How are you?
Morning, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Good. Do you want
Yes,
to
my
give
name
us a brief
is
intro as well? Thank you.
yeah. So my name is Beck. My day job is fibre jointer in Chiefs. Um, and I'm on the Pride Committee as field engagement lead. And yeah, like Izzy saying, I'm really excited about this collaboration between the two networks. It's so important that every person feels represented in both of our networks. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Beck. And we've got lovely Prem with us. Morning, Prem.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. So as Stephen just said, I am Prem. I am the intersectional lead for the Ethnic Diversity Network. I suppose that basically means so it's myself and Joe Karoma. We link in with all the other networks to kind of make sure we've got that representation across the board and have those important conversations to really make sure that we are thinking about absolutely everybody and everything that we do. And then in my day job, I am a operational planning manager in FND. I am quite new into the role, so I'm not going to try and explain what it is that I do because I'm still trying to learn that myself. But super excited to be part of this conversation. I definitely think it's such an important thing that we don't talk about. I think especially as you quite adequately know in the podcast, even tackling taboos, it is something which, especially within like the ethnic diverse community, we don't talk about enough. So super excited to be here and have the conversation.
Amazing. Yeah, 100% Prem. Thank you so much for coming on as well. And last but certainly not least, I'll introduce Immy. Morning, Immy.
Morning. Hey everyone, I'm Immy. I am the coordinator for the Ethnic Diverse Network. In my day job, I work in Openreach technology, so working in the network, NetOps, be specific. But yeah, just keeping an eye on the network, making sure things are running, and if not, trying to sort it out. But yeah, really happy to be a part of the conversation as well. Like, echoing what Prem said about it's so important to have these conversations as someone who's, experienced that firsthand. It's really important to be speaking about it and making changes for the next generations and for ourselves, and making sure that we are all set up for for improvement and working towards a better future.
No, 100% agree with me. Thank you so much. And yeah, welcome to you all. Please feel comfortable. Audience listening, please grab a drink, grab a snack, and really tune into the conversation. And put any of your thoughts in the comments below, or feedback to the EDN and Pride networks separately, because we really like to hear your thoughts as we share, because we know so many of us have similar mindsets, and even those who have different mindsets and want to kind of challenge certain thoughts, we really welcome the open conversation as well. So this podcast specifically, we're going to kind of be, as it's the first collaboration that the EDN and the Pride Network have done, we're going to kind of have a bit of an open conversation about kind of different experiences about those who fit into multiple communities. Because as Prem mentioned earlier, we really want to hone in on the topic of intersectionality, which essentially means even though the different people networks exist in their own spaces to try and tackle or to try and educate and to try and tackle issues within specific communities, we realize and even celebrate the fact that people fit into multiple communities and multiple kind of areas that make up them as a human being. So we realize that, as the networks are doing amazing things in their own kind of existence, they don't exist in silos. So the topic of intersectionality is really important between the different networks, whether it's EDN and Pride, whether it's Pride and neurodiversity, Gen, and EDN, etc. Like we really want to try and collaborate on these things as much as possible. So this podcast is another fruit to that tree of intersectionality. So I'll shortly hand the mic to Prem and Immy, because they're going to share a bit more of a personal experience about their like their livelihoods and fitting into different communities, and then we'll kind of go into a bit more of the nuanced topics about the LGBTQ plus community, the ethnic minority community, and how those two interlinked, and how we can actually do better to support especially our colleagues who fit into both spaces, and also wider society as well. So yeah, as I said, tune in, relax, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation. So thank you, everyone. So without further ado, Prem or Immy, do one of you want to kind of get started with your own maybe like personal journey, personal experiences about fitting into multiple communities and how it's sort of made you feel?
Yeah. Immy's looking at me, so I guess I'll go.
Go on.
So I think, first of all, I think it's very important to recognise the fact that I'm of a South Asian descent, and South Asia is made up of multiple countries. While cultural rarities are similar, they're also very different. So for myself, my family originally comes from India, so I'm of Indian descent. Specifically within that, India is a massive country. You've still got cultural variations within the country itself. So I guess to specify a bit further, my family's from Punjab, which is the very northern state on the border of Pakistan. So I am Indian Punjabi. Trying to fit into that community. Where do I start? It is, and one thing I think is a rhetoric which I've always said is it's hard enough trying to fit in to kind of British culture, expectation standards versus the Punjabi culture as well, which comes with its own trials and tribulations. It can be a very, I apologize to any Punjabis who are listening in, because I'm kind of going to lay it out for you here. As great as the culture is, it's amazing, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It is homophobic, it is misogynistic, and it is full of toxicity and many, many problems, along with all the good things, right? So trying to balance British culture versus Punjabi culture without then trying to throw into the mixer, all of a sudden you realize that you are different in terms of your sexuality as well, is extremely hard. It's extremely hard. And I think I'm very lucky in my situation that my mum is my number one fan. My family are all on board, etc., etc. But I also recognise the fact that I know many people who aren't, and you are forced with a decision of pick one. Is basically where you end up, right? So it's, you either lose your Punjabi culture entirely, you lose your British culture, you lose, the LGBTQ plus culture, and you have to put yourself into this box. But what happens, I guess, is the question here is what happens when you refuse to fit into that box and you span across all three. So yeah, I think I'm going to hand over to Immy, because I'm interested to see what her point of view is on this.
Yeah, so a bit about my background. I was raised Muslim, and I'm from Arab descent. I identify as queer because I personally, through what I've gone through, I don't feel that the person that I am fits into a very specific box just because of the lived experience that I've had. But yeah, similar to Prem, it's really hard to find where you fit and who you are. And especially for me, when I was realizing, that I was queer, I did a lot of searching online, and at the time when I was younger, there wasn't really anything for people who were different. It was, you see the same sort of, person, same sort of skin tone, same sort of, dress sense, and you just think, oh, well, something's wrong. I feel like I belong there, but also I can see that I don't belong there. So who am I? And for me, I actually did remove myself from my cultural background and from my family and stuff, because I didn't feel like I could fit into both spaces. And it's taken a lot of years to come to terms with the fact that I am who I am, and I'm not going to fit perfectly in one box. I'm not going to fit perfectly in the other, and that's okay. And that was very difficult for my family to come to terms with. And removing myself from that situation, I did lose a lot of touch with my culture, but also it allowed me to really evaluate who I was as a person. But then again, I fully submerged myself into the queer space, but then I realized that I was losing a lot of who I was and losing a lot of, my traditions and the way I grew up and what we, the family unit is so important in, people of colour's backgrounds, and not having that unit or that support, it's difficult. It makes you think, who am I? Will I ever have that again? But then, just through growth and learning and, growing older and becoming a more mature person, you realize that I am who I am. And if there's not space, then I'll make it myself. And yeah, just being that representation for people as well. So yeah.
Yeah, taking that ownership is a massive thing, but you have like it's a journey to kind of get to that point, right? Like it's not something that like we're necessarily born with, and it's not something that definitely comes easy, especially depending on your kind of personality type. Not everyone is the type who would like openly do that. Some people would need a helping hand or a push to be able to kind of take ownership of like being who they actually want to be, especially in communities that make it can sometimes make it difficult for you to kind of do that. And I wanted to touch more on like even some of the pressures that you guys might have even felt in your communities with like being openly being kind of who you are, because even for myself as like a heterosexual black male, even in I would say even like the black communities, I felt pressured even in terms of like being close to or being friends with like multiple different communities outside of my like kind of natural like community in terms of like other black heterosexual people, etc. So if I'm friends with loads of white people, if I'm friends with loads of people from the Asian community, like sometimes I could get pressures to be like, oh well, like are you not doing enough within your own community? And that's based on the decision that I've made to be friends with multiple people. But then like for you guys, like has there been like pressures of things, well, your sexuality, which essentially you can't control, then how's that actually like played a part in like your development, your growing up and things like this?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, reconnecting with my family was the biggest thing, because I did want to, go back in and, make amends and speak to my family again. But then it came with oh, why have you got this piercing? Why are you hanging out with these friends? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And uh, I think for me, the biggest thing was understanding where they're coming from, because even though I knew that their perspective was incorrect, especially for the life that I was living, there's so many layers to it. And for me and my family, it was the coming to the understanding of they didn't trust the culture that they were in to feel okay with the fact that, I might be having a harder life, or I'm doing things that are not really to do with the people in our culture, which is totally wrong. But given the way that they grew up, in the 70s and 80s, and experiencing racism and stuff, it came to a point where they just shut themselves off and said, we're these people, they're them people, and we need to do this in order for us to feel safe. But then that didn't allow any space for growth in mentality, or opening themselves up to things that are coming in, newer generations or different people's perspectives. And so it definitely took a lot of conversations and work, but it was for my family, at least, opening them up to, there's other things going on, and there's, you don't have to be so fearful anymore. I'm going to be safe living the life that I'm destined for. And that was a big part of it for me. But I don't know, Prem, if you've had any similar experiences.
Yeah, I think definitely the pressure aspect is massive. I think for myself, the pressure was it kind of definitely came in a different form. So for me, a lot of people who know me know my story. My parents are divorced. I haven't spoken to my dad in about 5, 6 years now. Got nothing to do with him. Um, um, a lot of people were talking first when the divorce did happen. No, it was not because my parents knew I was gay. That's not the reason I got divorced. It's a whole different situation. However, the pressure that I felt was, like I say, I mentioned already, my mum is my number one fan, my number one cheerleader. She's my best mate. I absolutely love her to pieces. But with my dad, the reason we don't talk is because he had this unwillingness to accept me for who I was. And the pressure that I felt from him was more of a kind of, what are people going to say? What are people going to think? especially within Leeds. I came from quite a well-known family where, like, my dad's dad, so my grandfather was extremely well respected. He's founded like a couple of the temples and stuff, and it was, oh my god, what are people going to say? And I felt this pressure from them to, well, I say from him, that I had to change who I was. I wasn't allowed to be me. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't 18 until they finally, it's going into a long story, but essentially I got outed. I never actually got to tell my parents. I got backstabbed by some snaky cousins on my dad's side, ironically enough. So I kind of got faced with all these conditions where suddenly it's right, if you want to live this lifestyle, and it was referred to as this lifestyle, your partner's not welcome here. You have to do dot 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 dot. And the only way that we kind of got through it was, I'll be very honest in saying my dad was going to kick me out. The only reason he didn't is because my mom stood her ground. I said, he goes, I go. And I'll forever be grateful and thankful to her for that. And the only way we got through it was we just didn't talk about it. I ended up I was volunteering for a month. So I went off to Tanzania, was there for a month volunteering, doing my own thing. I came back, and by that point, it was kind of, we knew it was there. We just don't acknowledge it. We just don't talk about it. But I still kind of felt this pressure while still, it was only when I was 18, I was finally coming into this, accepting who I was, trying to learn a bit more about, the communities, etc., and how to fit into both. But I still felt this pressure that I had to be a certain way. And then it was it kind of changed from, oh my God, I don't want my family to find out because I don't know what they're going to think, to, oh my God, now they know, but I still feel like I'm having to sneak around and do things, if that makes sense. I feel like there's a lot of layers to it, and I don't think I'm doing it fully justice, but it's so complex that I think it's so hard to explain. I could have a full hour conversation on just this alone.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so I don't know if Izzy or Beck wanted to jump in, if not, had a point.
Oh yeah. I'm really curious to know, and only if you're comfortable, of course, but like, as someone's child, like the impact that those concerns would have had on your mental health and like your ability to thrive and stuff must have been really quite a lot, and probably beyond what your parents could have imagined it would have put on you.
Yeah, well, for me, definitely. I was the oldest daughter of my entire generation. So there was definitely a lot of pressures on me. There was always that picture of, oh, she'll go to a good school and, then she'll get married. And that never was set out for me. But I think coming from that background, you feel that from day one. You know that you're working to a better future, sometimes for your parents, because they made a lot of sacrifices for you to have this opportunity. And so it's not even about just being queer, it's about, I've got this on my shoulders. I've got to carry on this legacy because that's what's been written for me, and everybody has made so many sacrifices for me to be here and do this and have all these opportunities, that you kind of just don't want to throw it all in their face. And it, for me, really, it took me a long time to even believe that I was queer, because it's all so set out that you just think, oh, this is what was meant for me. And for my mum as well, she was born in this country, but her parents weren't, and she made so many sacrifices in her own life to carry on the legacy of her parents. So it was kind of like, if she could do it, why can't I do it? And I've had more opportunity, and then it takes away from the whole I'm queer, and it pushes you in this position of, oh, I need to make a decision now. Am I going to carry on this legacy of being in this family and being that provider and doing all the things that were meant for me? Or am I going to take myself away from that and forge my own path? And who knows what's going to be then? I don't feel certain about it, and they don't feel certain about it because they've not known anything else. So it's very much a, so again, like Prem said, so many layers. It's not just I'm queer, I'm going to come out, or I don't feel safe. It's, how will the community view you? How will your parents feel? What are you doing with your own legacy as a person of color who has probably struggled to come up in this society anyway? Throwing all that away and just making your own path, does it make sense? So yeah, it's a lot of different things.
No, I definitely agree with you, Amy. And I think following on actually from a point you made earlier, right, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned about the fact that you had to leave the family home and kind of immerse yourself within the queer community, and you realise what you're losing. I think it's kind of leading on as well with back your point about being someone's child and the pressures that you face, and like the mental impact that it has. I think you have got that pressure, which does create the mental impact because you don't want to disappoint them. And there's your parents, and you're brought up in this culture, so you don't know what to think. But I also think a mental impact comes from trying to fully immerse yourself in that queer community and that queer culture. I'll be very honest in saying that's something which I I don't think I have done, but because I kind of saw myself while I saw around it, and I could kind of feel it happening, is you do lose that whole culture identity of like where you come from. And I think, I see a lot on Instagram and place about chosen family and how it's all going to be okay and this and that. But I don't think it ever really takes into account the mental impact that happens when you're almost yearning for those who are like you to do the traditions that you're brought up in. And I think little things like for me, every single year, every Diwali, my house looks like, I think you can see it from space. I like that many candles. And it's something like me and my mum. I'm very lucky. My other half, Danny, he's so amazing and he's so great, and he fully gets involved in the culture. So like this year, he did it with us as well. And I don't know what it would be like if I didn't have that and the mental impact that would have. So I think you also are put into that position where, again, I remember saying, pick one. You can't have everything, but I suppose it's the mental impact of what happens when you do want everything. Like for me, the impact is that, do I really have any queer friends? No, not really, because I kind of wanted to keep my heritage while also being an advocate. So I have not been able to. I've been able to be an advocate. I've been able to have a voice, but I've not been able to immerse myself in the community where I can sit here and say, yeah, I've got a group of queer friends. Because to be quite honest, I don't really have a group.
See,
Yeah.
I'm the complete opposite. Oh, sorry, Stephen.
No, go, carry on, carry on.
I've got what you would call the chosen family, but they are all, British, and I think one of them Scottish. But as much as they've been there for me in the ways that they can, there's also so many ways that they can't. And you're right, like my culture will never be celebrated just as a normal thing. I'll have to push for that, or I'll have to, and that's not how it was growing up in my family. That's not how my background or how I was living up until I came out looked like. And that is very difficult. And you're right, you do have to pick a side, or that's what it feels like. I don't know, maybe in the future. And it is getting a lot better, especially in my friendship group. I think people are more aware of, cultural issues going on in the world and stuff. And so they have started to really make an effort. But you are right, it does feel like there's just that big disconnect of, you can have this or you can have this.
Yeah, I think the word or phrase identity crisis comes to mind with this generation at times, because I think especially like I really resonated in me when you were speaking about like the pressures of like parents from an ethnic minority background because of like what they've had to deal with like since like being immigrants like to the UK, and with like not only like racism in its entirety, but also like the struggles of being able to get a job and really provide for family and really like build up a generation. And I think a lot of us are like lucky to be like maybe second or third generation kind of either immigrants or like obviously born in this country, so our parents were immigrants or grandparents were immigrants, so we're lucky to kind of start to reap the benefits of that, maybe like economically to some extent, but like culturally and socially there's still like a lot to educate people on, a lot to like kind of change, and a lot of that results in like what it's born into an identity crisis, because you could argue that looking at our parents and grandparents when they quote unquote think about what life is like back home. So if you talk about the Asian community or the Black community or various different ethnic minority communities, like a lot of those countries still have like laws which are against the LGBTQ plus community, for example. So it's like those traditional kind of anchors that still exist, but then whereas like there's a community and a generation of people who are born and bred in the UK, still have that cultural heritage, but then are like living their lives in the UK, but then still having some attachment, but then trying to kind of create and educate and morph into this new kind of way of living, and also educate our parents and generations beforehand on like how okay it is to kind of be this person in this space kind of thing. So there's a lot to kind of like think about. I don't know if what I've said has started to trigger that things in people's heads to go on, Prem.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, Stephen, just from leading on from what you said about the fact, we talk about back home, and we talk about the laws and stuff. I do feel, and Immy, I'm not sure if you feel the same. I do feel in the queer community, there's this whole disconnect, right? When you come from an ethnic background, there's almost like this stigma of, if you're from like the Middle East, or if you're from like certain South Asian countries where, oh, it's not right, it's illegal, we need to campaign and we need to dot, 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 dot. But I also think, and if around a wider topic, there's this whole disconnect about the fact that we have to think about most of these laws were never there. They were introduced by the white British people.
Yeah, I was going
And
to say about that.
we're still facing the impacts of colonialism, right? And I think that's also a topic here where the queer community doesn't really acknowledge that. And I don't think it's very good at celebrating those who are different. It's also Eurocentric. It's also, you know, what's over there, that's so wrong. Those laws, dot, 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 dot. I'm never going to go there. But I think it's kind of looking into the history of, well, why is it there? How did they get there in the first place?
Yeah.
And kind of learning to be more diverse. Like I said, I'm not sure if you kind of experience the same, or
Yeah, I
kind of get
definitely agree. I grew up in the era of, oh, we're gay or we're queer, so we can't travel to 20 plus countries, 50 plus countries. And then it takes away from the fact that people from those countries are also queer, and what are their struggles. But you are right. I think in our society today, there's a lot of focus on, I'm marginalized because I'm a queer person, but not the other aspects of their identity and how they might play a part in other people's lives. And it's such a important thing that I think as a group we do need to have these discussions and as such. But I don't know if as a society we're in that place or we're ready yet, because I think there's so much of queer people just being marginalized in general that it feels like, oh, we need to sort this out first and then we can move on to these other things. But the other things are still happening at the same time, and it's not fair to have that prioritization like that. That's just how I feel, or how I see it in being in the community today.
100%.
No, 100%. Yeah, I don't know if Izzy or Beck wanted to close off on any thoughts.
No, but it's really, I just yeah, thanks for sort of sharing these stories, because I think as like just looking at our Pride committee at the moment, we haven't really got that sort of lived experience. So to hear the nuances of what your different communities like go through, and like cultures, how they approach like queerness or just LGBT people, it's really, it just really brings it to light that we do need to sort of do more to integrate these two communities together. So
yeah, kind of like all I've been thinking the whole time is just how important this conversation is, and how it's a conversation that just isn't had enough, and like Immy, when you were saying about when you were younger and that you didn't see yourself reflected in the society around you, and I think kind of what you were saying is about like we do have a lack of diversity in our committee, for example, for one reason or another, and it makes it even more important that these conversations are had, and it kind of highlights the importance of that visibility, because people are experiencing this and it is real and it is happening. So we need to make sure that these issues are spoken about.
Yeah, definitely, Beck. And even just on that topic of like what more can be done, and like kind of we always, I guess, as networks and as people who are really passionate about diversity and inclusion, I always want to think like what can be done next, what are the solutions, etc. So like I wanted to kind of open up to the panel to for any kind of like thoughts and ideas on how we can better create like a safe space for people who want to speak out, like sort of inside and outside the workplace, specifically like from our two communities. I know we have like different services within the Openreach space, which we can kind of signpost as well. But just as a general like thought process, like how people think we can do better to create that safe space and educate more, and actually do more to kind of change some of the issues that we've been reflecting on in the last 20 minutes.
Well, I'll go. Sorry, Prem. I was going to say I haven't been with Openreach very long. It's been, under 6 months. So I can only really give an experience of outside Openreach. But for me, I think the first time I ever felt a safe space was when I went to Black Pride in 2018. Because I think that was the first time for me I really saw people who were living the same experience as me. And there was a stall and they were playing some Arabic music and dancing, with a shaky belt, and all these things that I'd seen growing up and going to Arab weddings and stuff. I'd never even thought in my mind that I could see that in a queer space. And they run those events, you can go and have that, Arabic dancing experience with other queer people. And that for the first time was me feeling a safe space. And for me, that just stems from the representation, seeing who you were, people like you, hearing shared experiences, but also from conversations, Black Pride. I ended up going with Stonewall. They paid for my ticket and they had a session before, and we all sat and we were having conversations. And I think that's where it all stems from, is that we can't fix something that's broke unless we know how it's broken, and it's so important to have those conversations so we know exactly what we need to do to move forward and what exactly are the issues and how we can work to change them.
No, I definitely agree with everything you just said, Immy. I think in terms of like from a business perspective, but also from an all-around community perspective, kind of 2 points came to mind from that. I think number one is, as much as I agree with you, I think the issue is it's all very London-centric. Unless you live in London, it's so hard to like find these services, which kind of leads on to like my second point, which is, and I think we're only just scratching the surface here. I think there's so much more that we can discuss about this and so much more to go into. From my own experience, I'm a religious person. So like, my family is Sikh, I am Sikh. It's how I've been brought up, and it's something which I still very much am in touch with today. And I know, like, even religiously, there's the only groups that exist are in London. And I think there's more to be done, who I guess kind of to reach people who are a bit like me, I guess. I go to these queer spaces still, and I kind of noticed, especially in Leeds, I'm going to quote something here for anyone who's seen The Blind Side with Sandra Bullock. It's a quote which Big Mike says, which is, "I feel like a fly in milk." And
Yeah.
that's how I feel when I walk in some of these queer spaces still, especially up north. I look around and think, oh my God, I'm the only brown person in here. And I feel like I stand out. And I find that I still struggle to have conversations. And, before I met Danny, we still have a struggle in like dating, trying to juggle culture, but then also like religion as well, which is the two so important things to me. So I think overall there is still more that we can be doing to create those safe spaces within the queer community, but outside of London. And I think as a business, is that a case of we create like weekly groups in like strategic locations? Do we go to like training sites to try and engage with the field more? Because I'm sure we're not the only people who feel like this.
No, I was going to say, I think that when you look at the whole community, I think it's just I can't remember my point, but my point was, oh yeah, I remember my point. My point was that we are in such a lucky, fortunate position to be on these committees, where we can directly kind of drive and influence change. And I think that kind of, for me, really brings home that level of responsibility that we have in these positions to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and that we are doing what we can to create spaces like that. You're completely right, Prem. I think that there does need to be more across the country as well. What that looks like, I don't know. I mean, we're keen to do a lot more face-to-face stuff. So it'd be good to sort of catch up about this and see if we can get a plan together, because just it's about being around your people, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Izzy, yourself?
Yeah, just to I agree with what like Beck said, and what Prem said just about the sites as well. And I think, I guess what we've sort of struggled with, well, maybe I'm speaking just for all of the Pride Committee. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Beck, but I think what we struggle with is knowing like how to get people to engage with us, and then obviously trying to get like like other communities to engage with us as well. So like these sort of conversations are going to give us more of an idea, and then we can bring people so we can come face to face. And like you said, Prem, then you're not the only person like in the room who stands out. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not going to be a problem. I think that's something that we also need to tackle to sort of create that safe space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with what Beck and Prem said.
So just to add on to that as well. So sorry. It's just to add on to both the points you made, Beck and Izzy. I think in terms of creating those safe spaces as well, right, and the face-to-face aspect, I'm also aware that I think initially the face-to-faces may consist a lot of those who are not people of colour. I'm trying to politely say white people. Sorry, I don't know if there's a polite way of saying it. I'm so sorry. Apologies to anybody watching this. But I think it's still important to have that education piece there so that they understand what other people feel, to then create an entrance for people of colour to then come into the room.
Yeah. With History Month next, well, from tomorrow, I was just saying to Izzy earlier, I was going to message you actually about it, Prem, but I want to do like a piece that highlights key figures from sort of Black and Asian LGBTQ plus communities, like we were talking earlier about Lady Phil, and just highlighting the work that she's done, and yeah, just kind of raising awareness of really prominent figures that the community's been fortunate enough to have, and you know what they've brought to that conversation. I think why shouldn't we, and why haven't we, is I think the question that we need to be asking ourselves. And I think that there needs to be accountability, and you know, like I said before, we're in a position now where we can make change, and it's something that I want to focus on this year, is really opening that up. And yeah, it's important.
No, definitely, Beck. And I think one thing I really took heart from was like when you mentioned earlier about how like privileged we are to be in like these positions in the committees to like kind of like really push and drive this work. And that's essentially like those audience you're watching, this is just a 35 minute microcosm of like, you know, everything that we want to try and do as like different networks. And of course the networks exist way beyond the people who are selected to be in committee. So we really want to hear from like our wider like audience or wider members on like how more we can like collaborate and do different things to try and like drive change in our different communities, because a podcast like this is just to really like start scratching the surface, but as Prem's mentioned, as all of you have mentioned, there's so many different layers. So this is just sort of opening the conversation, like opening Pandora's box on the whole topic, and like hopefully it can be the start of something like really amazing to really change and really ultimately make people's lives easier, make people's lives like better and happier, especially in our colleague space as well. So this is hopefully something that can continue to grow arms and legs and can continue to flourish in our community as well. So yeah, thank you all very much for coming on our podcast. Thank you, audience, for listening as well. As I said at the top of the podcast, please let us know your comments below on your thoughts on the discussions that we've spoken about, what more you'd want to see, like from not just the Tackling Taboos series, but also from the Pride and the EDN networks. That we always welcome like conversations, suggestions, ideas, people who want to get involved, volunteering. Like it all helps to drive everyone's agenda, which is like making everyone feel like they can bring their full selves to work as well. So yep, I want to thank our guests as well for all coming on. So Prem, Izzy, Immy, and Beck, thank you so much for your time, for just everything you've contributed to this podcast, and yeah, really looking forward to collaborating more in the future. But yeah, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye.